In the vast ocean of Buddhist teachings, there is a mysterious realm that often sparks contemplation. The five supernormal powers frequently mentioned in the sutras. These extraordinary abilities shine like stars along the path of the practitioner, attracting the gaze and pursuit of countless individuals. However, the Buddha held a subtle attitude towards this, acknowledging its truth while admonishing his disciples not to become attached to it. What profound wisdom lies behind this seemingly paradoxical teaching? In a tranquil dusk, the Javaka grove was bathed in the afterglow of the setting sun, where Venerable Mogallāna was seated surrounded by a group of disciples. The air was filled with the scent of incense, and faint chants of sutras could be heard from afar. A young bhikkhu with hands clasped in Anjali Mudra, his eyes filled with a yearning for knowledge. "Venerable Sir, we often hear of your vast supernatural powers. Could you kindly elucidate for us what the five superknowledges, Pankavijnana, in Buddhism are? What significance do these mysterious powers hold?" Mu Jinlian gazed intently at the disciple, and after a moment of contemplation, she slowly spoke. "The ultimate goal of practice is liberation, not the pursuit of supernatural powers. However, since you have this doubt, I shall briefly explain it to you, so that you are not misled by the heretical teachings of non-Buddhist paths." He first spoke about the divine eye, which is not an ordinary eyesight, but a kind of insight that transcends the limitations of the material world. Through this ability, I can observe things hundreds of thousands of miles away, witness the process of birth and death of countless beings, discern extremely subtle material structures, and even perceive all forms and appearances in both the heavenly realms and the human world. With eyes slightly narrowed and almost closed, it seemed as if he was employing the abilities he described. A moment later, he opened his eyes and said, "At this very moment, in the southeast direction of Rajgir, a family is holding a funeral for an elder. This elder lived to the age of 82, having amassed vast merits through good deeds during his lifetime, and has now been reborn as a celestial being. In a small village over 300 li away, a hardworking farmer had just been bitten by a venomous snake. Without timely aid, his life was likely to be short. Several monks from Rajagraha looked at each other in astonishment, then nodded in confirmation, realizing that such a funeral was taking place in the city. The wooden tip connects to the explanation of the divine ear power. The divine ear power allows me to hear sounds from afar, whether it is conversations among humans or the subtle melodies of the heavenly realms, all reaching my ears clearly. Even the subtle thoughts of sentient beings often transform into faint sounds that I can perceive." After entering meditation again, he said, "At this moment, in the palace of the Kosala kingdom, King Pasenadi is deliberating with his ministers on how to aid the disaster victims, while far away atop the snowy mountains, practitioners are chanting ancient scriptures. An elderly bhikkhu who guides through judgment is truly extraordinary. Before I left the Kosala kingdom, I indeed heard that the king was preparing to convene his ministers to discuss disaster relief measures." Mu Jinlian continued to explain supernatural powers, also known as divine abiding powers. These powers enable practitioners to transcend material constraints, such as flying at will, passing through mountains and walls, entering and exiting the ground as if swimming in water, and even reaching any desired place in a single thought. When the disciples asked him if he had ever employed this method of communication, Mogallāna recalled that on one occasion, the Buddha instructed him to go to the Trayastrimsha heaven to teach the Dharma to the late Lady Maya. In just a single moment of thought, I ascended from Jambudvipa to the 33 heavens. In the heavenly palace, I saw countless devas, their bodies clear and transparent, and the palace is made of the 7 treasures, exquisitely magnificent. Regarding the faculty of recollecting past lives, Mu Jinlian explains that this faculty enables practitioners to comprehend all the experiences of their previous existences. Through this ability, I can recall the cycles of birth and death of myself and others throughout countless eons. I once recalled that in past lives I had been a king, a merchant, a beggar, a celestial being, and even an animal. It is precisely because I have personally witnessed the suffering of samsara that I have developed an unparalleled faith in the Dharma. Lastly, it is the divine eye of mind, or claircognizance, which enables me to know the thoughts and intentions of others. For example, at this moment, I know that the bhikkhu sitting on the left is thinking of his family back home, while the bhikkhu on the right is contemplating the Buddha's teaching from yesterday. The two monks who were named exhibited expressions of surprise, then immediately bowed their heads and joined their palms together, acknowledging that the Venerable's words were true. At that moment, a weathered elderly monk raised a crucial question. "Venerable Sir, since these supernatural powers are so extraordinary, why did the Buddha caution us against deliberately seeking such powers?" Mukimuran's expression became solemn. Although supernatural powers are inconceivable, they are by no means the ultimate goal of practice. During my practice, I was once bewildered by supernatural powers, regarding them as signs of attainment. Until one time, he recounted his experience when he first attained the divine eye clairvoyance. At that time, he had just attained the divine eye, enabling him to see things invisible to ordinary people. One day, a poor old woman came to the monastery to offer alms to the Buddha. He only brought a small bowl of old rice, which was all the savings he had accumulated through frugal living. Mu Jianlian used his divine eye to observe and discovered that this elderly woman had been a princess in her past life, and due to greed, she has become impoverished in her current life. Mu Jianlian said to the old woman, "In your past life, you were a princess consort, but due to your stinginess, you suffer poverty in this life. Although not lost at present, what is lost is very little. I fear that the merits in the future will be limited." The elderly woman was deeply shocked upon hearing this, then bowed her head in shame and quietly left. After the Buddha learned of this matter, he called Mu Xian forward and sternly pointed out that although he possessed the divine eye and could see cause and effect, he had harmed the good intentions of the elderly woman. Although she lacked a little, she did her utmost, rejoicing in her heart, and her merit is boundless. By being proud of his supernatural powers, he instead obstructed his faith and path to liberation. Subhuti profoundly summarized, "From that moment, I understood that supernatural powers are merely adjuncts on the path of practice, not the ultimate goal. True practice is to eliminate afflictions, attain wisdom, and ultimately achieve liberation." Just as Subhuti was recounting the history of supernatural powers, the Venerable Shariputra, foremost in wisdom, entered the assembly and joined the discussion. Subhuti appeared to acknowledge that his words were indeed most proper. These 5 supernatural powers are indeed extraordinary, but without the guidance of wisdom, they are more likely to lead one astray. Shariputra then spoke of an even more supreme realm. The Buddha once mentioned a supernatural power beyond the first 5 supernormal abilities, capable of eradicating all afflictions and attaining ultimate liberation. This is what is called the 6th supernormal power, the power of exhausting defilements. The first 5 supramundane paths can also be attained by non-Buddhist heretics, but only the path of the cessation of all defilements is unique to the Buddhist teaching. Shariputra further explained that although the 5 supernatural powers are marvelous, they all belong to defiled spiritual powers and remain within the 3 realms. Thus, they cannot help us attain complete liberation. The power of exhausting all defilements is the immaculate supernormal power, capable of completely eradicating all afflictions, transcending the 3 realms, and ceasing the cycle of rebirth. He elucidated the profound significance of the divine eye, divyakaku, in an accessible manner. The true value of the divine eye, clairvoyance, does not lie in the superficial ability to see distant or threatening phenomena. Its core merit lies in enabling practitioners to clearly understand the operation of the law of causality. Through the divine eye, we can directly observe how sentient beings are generated within the 6 realms due to the karma of san, wholesome, and ga, unwholesome, actions. This will inspire us to develop a resolute determination toward the law of cause and effect, thereby cultivating greater diligence in our practice. Shariputra recalled that once, using the divine eye, I observed the destination of a woman who had just passed away and was being reborn. This woman outwardly appeared generous and charitable, but secretly committed many acts that harmed both heaven and humanity. I saw her reborn as a venomous snake, living in a dark and damp environment. At this moment, I deeply realized that superficial acts of kindness cannot conceal the lustful thoughts within the heart, and the law of cause and effect is absolutely precise and unerring. Regarding the divine ear, Shariputra explained that the superior merit of the divine ear lies in its ability to hear the sounds of the Dharma realm and perceive the joys and sufferings of sentient beings. This capability can arouse great compassion in practitioners and generate the vow to save all beings. Moreover, the divine ear clairvoyance enables us to hear the subtle Dharma sounds of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, thereby attaining a deeper understanding of the Dharma teachings. Ananda, foremost in hearing, also joined the discussion. Although I have not attained enlightenment, I have long followed the Buddha, listening to his teachings on realization. The Buddha once said that among the psychic powers, clairvoyance appears to be the most miraculous, yet is actually the easiest to cultivate. Its true merit does not lie in the ability to fly or pass through walls, but in attaining transcendent freedom of body and mind through the meditative absorption required for mastering the body's supernatural powers, thus no longer being bound by the limitations of the material world. The foremost ascetic, Venerable Kasyapa, added that profound practice requires a very high degree of concentration, samadhi, which enables us to transcend attachment to the body. Many people mistakenly believe that the body is the self, thereby creating countless afflictions. Through diligent practice and profound understanding, we realize that the body is merely a temporary phenomenon composed of the four great elements in combination, lacking any inherent self-nature, thereby reducing attachment to the physical form. The foremost Tathagata, the Buddha, expounded the profound meaning of the knowledge of past lives. The knowledge of past lives enables us to understand the experiences of previous existences and to directly perceive the nature of samsara. This not only enhances our renunciation, but also helps us understand the capacities and dispositions of sentient beings, enabling us to guide them more effectively towards liberation. The Buddha shared his own experiences. Once, I encountered a merchant who stubbornly resisted the Dharma. Through clairvoyance of past lives, I know that he was deeply influenced by heterodox teachings in his previous life, harboring a profound prejudice against the Dharma. After understanding this, I did not directly expound the Dharma to him. Instead, I first discussed the principles of commerce with him, then gradually guided him to comprehend cause and effect, ultimately enabling him to develop faith in the Buddha Dharma. Ananda, foremost in the divine eye, spoke about his clairvoyance, stating that its true merit lies in understanding the minds of sentient beings, thereby providing the most appropriate teachings. Just as a skilled physician understands a patient's illness before prescribing the appropriate medicine, a Buddha's mind-reading ability has its limits. He can only perceive the manifested thoughts of sentient beings, but cannot fully comprehend the deeper karmic forces and latent seeds. Shariputra summarized that the five superknowledges each possess their own merits, yet each also has its limitations. The divine eye perceives form, but does not see the mind. The divine ear hears sounds, but does not understand their meaning. Although the divine eye power enables flying, it cannot transcend the three realms. Karma awareness perceives the past, but not the future. Other minds perceive the manifest, but not the latent. Only the sixth path, the path of the exhaustion of defilements, can completely eradicate all afflictions and attain ultimate liberation. The image of Mogallāna metaphorically suggests that the five spiritual powers can be seen as tools on the path of practice. They can help us practice better, but they are not the purpose of practice. just as one needs a boat to cross the river. But upon reaching the other shore, the boat should be abandoned rather than carried on one's shoulders to continue onward. As the assembly was engaged in discussion, the Buddha calmly walked into the scripture hall. Hearing the disciples' exchanges, he smiled and said, "Well said. Well said. Your understanding of the absence of supernatural powers is quite accurate. Supernatural abilities indeed have their merits, but they can easily lead to a sense of pride and attachment, causing one to cling to these powers and neglect the path of liberation." The Buddha then recounted a thought-provoking story. A practitioner attained the 5 supernatural powers through austere practices. He is capable of flying through the air, foreseeing the future, and understanding the minds of others. Soon, his reputation spread far and wide, attracting numerous devotees who came to pay homage and offer abundant support. This practitioner gradually became arrogant, believing that they had attained extraordinary accomplishments. One day, the Buddha passed by his place of practice. This practitioner, wishing to demonstrate his abilities, flew into the sky and sat cross-legged on a cloud. The Buddha calmly asked him, "How long can you remain suspended in the air?" The practitioner proudly replied, "1 day, 2 days, even 7 days pose no problem." The Buddha asked again, "Can you avoid death?" The practitioner remained silent and shook his head. The Buddha then asked, "Can you avoid the suffering of birth, aging, sickness, and death?" The practitioner shook his head again, and the Buddha compassionately said, "Then, what true value do your supernatural powers have? They are merely worldly phenomena, and ultimately cannot help you attain liberation from the cycle of birth and death. In this world, there are birds that can freely soar in the sky, beasts that can easily traverse mountains and cliffs, and fish that can swim effortlessly in the water. Yet none of them can escape the sea of suffering caused by birth and death. True liberation does not lie in supernatural powers, but in eliminating the 3 poisons of greed, hatred, and ignorance, and realizing the wisdom of no self." Upon hearing this, the practitioner descended from the clouds and immediately realized the limitations of supernatural powers. Thereafter, he sought the Buddha's guidance on the path to liberation. The Buddha's story was like a sudden enlightenment, profoundly inspiring all the disciples present. They realized that although supernatural powers are marvelous, they are not the ultimate path to enlightenment. What truly matters is a pure mind, right view, and the wisdom of liberation. In the Mahaprajnaparamita, there is a profound analogy. Supernatural powers in the path of liberation are like a bird's 2 wings. They aid in flying but are not the destination. If practitioners can correctly regard supernatural powers without attachment or pride, they can instead use these powers to better cultivate the path of liberation and assist more sentient beings. The Ragama Sutra provides detailed accounts of the origins of various supernatural powers, their merits and faults, and particularly emphasizes that careless practice can easily lead to adopting non-Buddhist mentalities, becoming attached to supernatural abilities, and thus failing to attain liberation. The Buddha repeatedly admonished his disciples that supernatural powers are neither useless nor entirely useful. Those who use them skillfully can guide beings to liberation, while those who misuse them may be deceived. Bodhisattva Arjuna also pointed out in the Mullamidhaimakarika that supernatural powers are like illusions and transformations, devoid of inherent nature and permanence. Seeking them excessively becomes an obstacle, while neglecting them too lightly results in a loss of support. True wisdom lies in faithfully following the righteous path. These teachings make us understand that the true value of martial skills does not lie in their superficial marvels, but in their supportive role on the path of spiritual practice and liberation. If practitioners can correctly understand and utilize these supernatural powers without attachment or pride, they can use them to better cultivate the path of liberation and assist more sentient beings. The Tiantai master Zhizhe Ziyi provided a profound summary on this matter. The 5 psychic powers are worldly phenomena, while the 6th psychic power transcends worldly phenomena. The first 5 mediations are accompanied by afflictions and are accessible to externalists. The The sixth teaching eliminates afflictions and is beneficial to the Dharma. If the five supernormal powers are guided by the sixth power, they also become supportive conditions for liberation. In the vast ocean of Dharma, practitioners are often drawn to various miraculous states and powers, much like moths attracted to the bright lights in the night. However, the true wise understand that supernatural powers are like the sails on a ship, capable of accelerating progress, but excessive reliance or attachment to them can lead one astray from the path to liberation. A contemporary Zen master once said, "If supernatural powers are guided by wisdom, they serve to assist the path. If driven by ignorance, they become acts of delusion." This sentence reveals the double-edged nature of supernatural powers, iti. On the path of practice, we need right view as our compass, compassion as our driving force, and wisdom as our rudder, in order to safely navigate the vast ocean of supernatural powers and reach the shore of liberation. In the Diamond Sutra, the Buddha tells Subhuti that all appearances are illusory. If one sees all forms as non-forms, then one sees the Tathagata. This statement equally applies to the realm of supernatural powers. Although supernatural powers are wondrous, they still belong to phenomena and remain manifestations arising dependently within emptiness. A true practitioner should not be attached to the manifestations of supernatural powers, but should see the essence beyond phenomena, perceive the unconditioned through the conditioned dharmas, and recognize the transcendental dharma beyond the worldly dharmas. For those newly entering the Buddhist path, hearing stories of supernatural powers may naturally arouse curiosity and aspiration. This is a common human sentiment. However, as one's practice deepens, this curiosity and longing should transform into firm faith in the path to liberation and diligent effort. Just as a person learning to swim for the first time may be captivated by the ability to float in the water, a true master swimmer focuses on how to move forward more effectively in the water, rather than merely floating. In today's era, where materialism and spirituality intertwine, people's fascination with supernatural powers seems to be ever-increasing. Reports of various paranormal phenomena and supernatural abilities have emerged continuously, attracting the attention of countless people. However, more than 2,500 years ago, the Buddha already pointed us in the right direction. Supernatural powers are not the goal. Liberation is the ultimate refuge. The venerable and great masters, through their own practice and cultivation, have demonstrated to us the proper application of spiritual powers. They either use supernatural powers to transform stubborn beings or demonstrate the inconceivable nature of the Dharma through such powers, or protect the transmission of the true Dharma with these abilities. However, behind these events, they never forget that supernatural powers are merely tools, not the ultimate goal. As the Buddha said, if one uses supernatural powers to seize the minds of people, one is a false teacher. If one uses the true Dharma to transform beings, one is a true teacher. This teaching clearly indicates the direction of practice. Not using supernatural powers to confuse the masses, but benefiting living beings through the true Dharma. When we look back at those truly great, virtuous, and eminent monks, they often do not flaunt supernatural powers, but instead lead by example, demonstrating what genuine cultivation truly is. Their words, actions, compassion, and wisdom are the greatest spiritual powers, for these qualities can genuinely transform the mind and guide sentient beings toward liberation. Worldly communication is like the scenery along the path of cultivation, beautiful and captivating. But a true practitioner understands that no matter how beautiful the scenery is, it is merely an adornment on the journey, not the destination. Just like climbing a high mountain, along the way one might see beautiful flowers and magnificent waterfalls, but the true goal is to reach the summit. In our daily practice, it may be difficult to experience the supernatural states described in the scriptures. However, we can incorporate the spiritual essence of the five superknowledges into our own practice. The divine eye teaches us to clearly see the law of cause and effect. The divine ear teaches us to listen to the sufferings of sentient beings. The divine body teaches us not to be attached to the physical body. The knowledge of past lives teaches us to understand the nature of life's cyclic existence. The mind reading teaches us to comprehend the inner world of others. Most importantly, the sixth and ultimate supernormal power, the extinction of defilements, is our ultimate goal in practice, to completely eradicate all afflictions and attain supreme liberation. The profound and subtle path of supernatural powers lies deeply. The gate to liberation is right before your eyes. May we all, guided by the Dharma, remain unbewildered by supernatural powers, undisturbed by external realms, firmly walk the path of liberation, and ultimately reach the other shore of nirvana. As the ancient masters have said, defiled supernormal powers are like bubbles, illusory and ephemeral. The wisdom of the undefiled life is as Vajra, unyielding and firm. In the fleeting and transient span of life, only the wisdom of liberation is the truly everlasting treasure.